It's quiet here tonight, the kind of quiet that feels like it's listening. You've stepped into a place where the air is heavy and every breath seems borrowed. Tonight's theme is graveyard fog. Stories that live in the silence between the graves, where the air moves like it's alive, and the living aren't always the only ones walking home. These are 8 true graveyard fog horror stories, encounters told by people who swear they weren't alone when the mist rolled in. Some heard voices whispering through the stone. Some saw shapes that shouldn't have faces, and some never made it out before the fog breathed back. If you think you've heard every cemetery story before and you haven't, these ones don't end when the fog lifts. They linger. They wait. Most people who wander into this channel forget to subscribe. But then again, forgetting things is what gets people lost in the mist, isn't it? What time is it where you are right now? And where are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. I like knowing who's awake at this hour. Now get comfortable, take a breath, and listen closely, because tonight, the fog remembers every name. Let's begin. The fog was so thick it made the world feel padded, like the night had stuffed cotton into my ears. I could still hear the crunch of gravel under my boots, but it sounded far away, muffled, like it wasn't me walking anymore. I shouldn't have been there. I kept telling myself that. 11:30 at night, alone in a graveyard I wasn't supposed to be in, and yet I couldn't make myself turn around. Not after what I'd heard the night before. I'm not a believer. I don't jump at shadows or talk about spirits or any of that stuff. But when I heard the voice, it wasn't imagination. It said my name. The first time I thought it was someone messing with me. The second time it came from the ground. I was back now because I needed to prove it. To myself, not anyone else. My sister's headstone was near the back of the cemetery, where the old part met the newer section. Her grave sat under a crooked oak that always looked like it was reaching for something. The fog swallowed everything past the second row of graves. My flashlight beam only cut a few feet ahead, the mist scattering the light like smoke. Every breath I took felt damp, metallic, like I was breathing through a wet cloth. The air was cold, but not cold enough to see my breath. That's what made it feel worse. Like the temperature wasn't real, just a trick of the fog. I followed the path until I reached the oak tree. The branches above creaked against each other even though there was no wind. I stopped and knelt beside the headstone. Maya Lane, 1994-2021. Loved beyond measure. I brushed away the leaves clinging to the base. My fingers felt numb even through my gloves. "Hey May," I whispered. My voice sounded smaller than I expected. "It's just me again." The fog moved behind me, thick and heavy. It made this slow rolling sound, like someone dragging their coat through wet grass. I turned. Nothing. I clicked off the flashlight for a second, just to see if my eyes would adjust. They didn't. The dark felt alive, pressing against me. When I turned the light back on, my stomach dropped. Someone had disturbed the ground near the next row of graves. The dirt looked churned up. Not like digging, more like something had crawled across it. I took a step closer, heart hammering. It wasn't new soil either. The dirt was darker, almost black in spots, wet and sunken. "Okay," I said out loud, trying to sound casual, like I wasn't seconds from bolting. Probably an animal. But then I saw it. A line, thin, almost like a finger had traced it, ran across the top of the nearest headstone. It wasn't carved. It wasn't dirt. It was fresh. The name on the grave was Thomas Wren, died in 1912. The line curved down beneath the engraved letters, looping once, and then spelling something faint. "Listen." My chest tightened. It didn't make sense. It wasn't there before. I'd been here yesterday, standing right in front of this exact headstone when I first heard it. That night, last night, I was walking home from work when the fog rolled in. My shortcut ran right behind the cemetery. I'd done it 100 times before. But last night, as I passed the fence, I heard it. A whisper, soft, low, coming from inside. It said my name, Eli. I froze. There was no one around, no cars, no wind. I remember standing there for maybe 30 seconds, heart racing, thinking someone was pranking me. Then it came again, quieter, but this time it didn't sound like it came from behind the fence. It came from below it. I ran home that night and told myself I'd imagined it. But when I tried to sleep, I kept dreaming about dirt pressing against my chest. When I woke up this morning, my fingernails had soil under them. Now standing over that same grave, staring at that word, listen, I realized something else. The dirt near the headstone was slightly indented. Not like a hole, more like someone had lain down there recently. I crouched and brushed my hand over the surface. The soil felt soft, too soft. It gave under my fingers like wet sand. That's when I heard it again. A sound faint, coming from below. Not a voice this time. Just a slow exhale. I froze, hand still on the dirt. Another breath, long, drawn out. Like someone sleeping just under the surface. Hello? I whispered. The ground shifted. Just barely. I stumbled back so fast I dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled sideways, cutting across the graves like a blade of light. The fog swallowed everything again. Something was moving under the dirt. I swear to God, I saw it. A ripple like something pushing up from underneath. Then, whisper soft, I heard my name again. Eli. I ran. Not toward the gate. My legs wouldn't go that way, but deeper through the fog. My brain wasn't working right. I just wanted distance from that grave. The cemetery stretched longer than I remembered. I passed rows of crooked stones, some sinking, some shattered. The fog moved differently here. Heavier, thicker, swirling in slow circles like breath on glass. I slowed down only when I tripped over a low marker. I landed hard, palms scraping against gravel. My flashlight flickered where it lay a few feet ahead. That's when I saw something that stopped me cold. Boot prints, not mine. They led across the wet ground, not fresh but visible enough. The toes pointed toward me. There were only 3 sets of steps. Then they stopped. No turn, no return prints. Just ended. I picked up the flashlight, shining it back and forth. The prints ended near an old stone bench. There was something on the seat. A small, folded piece of paper. My throat went dry as I reached for it. The paper was damp, edges curling. Inside, written in shaky handwriting, were 5 words. You're standing on the wrong grave. My stomach turned. I looked down, slowly, the beam of the flashlight trembling over the ground beneath my boots. The name on the stone was worn smooth, but I could still make it out. Elias Lane. My name. Same spelling. Same middle initial. Same birth date, but the death date was blank, no chisel marks. No scratches. Just a clean, empty space waiting to be filled. My hands started shaking so hard I dropped the note. The fog swallowed it instantly as if it fell into water. Okay, I whispered, my voice cracking. That's no. Someone's messing with me. This can't be. My voice echoed strangely, like it didn't want to leave my mouth. That's when the fog around the headstone moved. It didn't drift and it pulled inward, collapsing on itself, and I heard it again. The whisper right under my feet this time. It wasn't my name. Not yet. It was something else. Low, shaky. I leaned down before realizing how stupid that was. The sound got louder. Please! It sounded like Maya. My knees hit the dirt before I could stop myself. May? I whispered, pressing a hand to the stone. Is that you? The whisper came again, clearer this time. It's cold. I felt something move under my palm, faint but real, like a heartbeat deep under the soil. Jesus! I yanked my hand back, stumbling. No. The heartbeat, if that's what it was, then grew stronger. The dirt began to tremble. Then, all at once, a crack split through the ground. It wasn't big, just a hairline fracture, but enough to see the soil shifting, small clumps breaking away. My flashlight flickered, then went out completely. For a second, all I could hear was breathing. Mine, fast and shallow, and another slower one that didn't belong to me. I backed up, fumbling for my phone. My fingers were shaking so badly I dropped it twice before the flashlight came on. The crack had widened. The dirt looked like it had been pushed from below, like someone pressing their hand against thin fabric. Stop, I whispered. I don't even know why I said it, who I was talking to. Please stop. The whisper came again, but this time it wasn't Maya's voice. It was mine. Help me. The words came from beneath the headstone. My own voice, strained and desperate. I staggered back, dizzy. My vision blurred for a second. Fog, tears, panic, all blending. That's when I realized something else. Something that made my stomach drop even further. The air smelled like dirt and decay. But beneath it, faintly, I caught another scent. My cologne. I don't remember running. I just remember the gate slamming behind me, the metal rattling like it was laughing. By the time I reached my car, I could barely breathe. I kept checking the back seat like something might have followed me. When I got home, I went straight to the bathroom and scrubbed my hands. There was dirt packed under my nails again, dark, wet, and cold. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. That whisper. My own voice calling from under the earth. And when I finally looked at my hands again under the bathroom light, I saw something that made me sit on the floor and cry. Under my left thumbnail, faint but visible, was a thin gray line, like dried mud. Only it wasn't mud. It was a splinter of stone granite, the same kind Maya's headstone was made from. I told myself I wasn't going back. I swore I wouldn't. But all day today my phone's been vibrating every hour on the hour. No messages, no calls, just the vibration, and every time it happens I swear I hear a faint voice from the speaker. It says one word over and over: listen. I know how it sounds. I know what you're thinking. That I'm sleep-deprived, hallucinating, obsessed with grief. Maybe I am, but I can't ignore this anymore. Because a few hours ago I went out to check the car. The fog had started rolling in again, same as before. And under the rear windshield wiper I found another note. It said, "You didn't listen. Come back tonight." I told myself I wasn't going. That I'd throw the note away, block it from my mind, sleep through the night with the lights on if I had to. But by 11 p.m., the vibration started again. My phone rattled on the counter. No caller ID, no text, no missed call. Just that steady pulsing hum, and under the sound of it, faint but clear, was breathing, not static. Not background noise. Breathing, and soft, slow, wet, like someone inches from the microphone. I turned the phone over, hands shaking, and the screen flickered for a second. Not like a glitch, like something behind the glass moved. That's when the whisper came through again. Eli. Listen, I dropped the phone. It hit the floor and kept vibrating, rattling against the tile like it was trying to crawl somewhere. At 11:23, I was standing in front of the cemetery gate again. The fog was already there, hanging low and thick, pooling over the grass like spilled milk. I told myself I needed closure. That I just wanted to see if someone had been pranking me, but deep down I knew I wasn't in control anymore. The air tasted metallic again, damp, cold, like blood in the mouth. Every time I exhaled, it felt like the fog pushed my breath back toward me. I climbed the gate instead of opening it. The metal was slick under my gloves, coated with dew. The sound of my boots hitting the other side felt too loud. For a long moment, I just stood there, listening. The fog muffled everything. The world felt emptied out. Then faintly, I heard something ahead. Not a whisper this time. A tap, steady, slow, like someone running a fingernail against stone. Tap, pause, tap. It was coming from deeper in, near Maya's grave. The flashlight beam quivered with my hand as I followed the sound. I moved slower this time, forcing myself to breathe. The rows of graves looked different, closer together. The stones at odd angles like they'd shifted in the earth. I tried to stay on the path, but it kept disappearing into fog. My own footsteps sounded wrong, too soft, as if the ground was swallowing the noise. When I reached the oak tree, I stopped. The air around it felt heavier, like the fog had weight. The dirt by Maya's headstone had changed again. It wasn't just disturbed now. It was sunk in, a shallow depression, circular, about the size of a body. The tapping stopped, then so faint I almost missed it. Scratching. It came from directly under the headstone. "Maya?" I whispered, my throat dry. "If that's you," the ground shifted. A small puff of dust broke through the soil. Then came the voice. "Please, help me." It was her. I swear to God it was her voice. Exactly the same, but something was wrong with it. It was muffled, yes, but stretched somehow, like it was coming through too much air, or not enough. I dropped to my knees again, my flashlight rolling to the side. The light caught the engraving on the stone, and my stomach turned. Her name was gone. The words Maya Lane had been scraped out. The granite dust still fresh, and beneath it, carved into the stone in thin, shallow letters, was mine. Eli Lane. I stumbled back so fast I fell. My boot caught on something, a small wooden marker sticking out of the ground. I shone the light down. There were more of them now. Little makeshift stakes stuck in the dirt all around me, some with initials, some blank. The one I tripped on had a name written in shaky black ink. Thomas Wren, the same name from the grave that said, "Listen." I turned the light back toward Maya's grave and then froze. The soil was moving again. Slow, pulsing like someone breathing just beneath the surface. I should have run. But all I could think was, what if it was her? What if she was still down there somehow and I'd just left her alone last night? So I started digging. The dirt came away easy at first, soft, damp. My gloves soaked through. I used my hands, throwing clumps aside, not thinking about how deep I was going. The smell hit me after maybe a foot. Wet soil mixed with something sweet and rotten. I gagged and kept going. My fingers hit something hard, not wood, not stone. Smooth plastic. I brushed it off. It was a bag, thick and cloudy. Inside, something pale pressed against the plastic. It was a face, not Maya's. Mine. I jerked back so hard I hit the headstone. My flashlight dropped again, the beam cutting across the dirt. The plastic shifted. The face inside the bag turned toward me. The eyes opened. They weren't cloudy or dead-looking. They were wide awake. And then the whisper came again, this time from everywhere. "You buried the wrong one." The fog exploded upward like breath. The plastic bag vanished. My flashlight flickered, the beam cutting out. I scrambled backward, hands slipping on mud. The graves around me looked different again, newer. The stones clean, the dates recent. One read Eli Lane, 1994-2024. My own reflection shimmered faintly in the wet marble. I don't remember screaming, but my throat hurt after. I ran toward the gate, but every turn looked the same. The oak tree appeared again, no matter which way I went. The fog thickened until I couldn't see my hands. I shouted for help for anyone, but the sound came back to me wrong, like an echo with someone else's voice layered under it. The whisper, always the whisper. It circled me, soft, slow, patient. "You came back. You listened. Now stay." I fell to my knees again, gasping. My flashlight flicked back on, a dim, trembling, and pointed at something right in front of me, a new headstone. Fresh dirt, the name still damp from where it had been carved. Eli Lane, 1994-2025. He finally listened. My pulse roared in my ears. I started to shake my head, backing away. No, that's not me, Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, hands trembling. The screen lit my face, and for a moment it wasn't my reflection staring back. It was the one from the plastic bag, paler, mud-streaked. Eyes open too wide, the phone's speaker crackled. "It's cold down here," the same voice. Mine, but wrong, slower, heavier. I dropped it and ran. The fog didn't end. No matter how far I went, it was just rows of graves, shadows, silence. My lungs burned. My legs felt heavy, like the ground was trying to hold me in place, and then everything went quiet. The kind of silence that isn't empty. The kind that's listening back. That's when I realized the fog wasn't moving anymore. It was shaped, human-shaped. Dozens of faint outlines in the mist standing between the graves, still as statues. They didn't walk toward me. They didn't move at all, they just breathed. Every exhale made the fog thicker. Every inhale sounded like soil shifting. I stepped back, one slow step at a time. "Please," I whispered. "I just want to leave." The nearest shape tilted its head. Then, without sound, it pointed. Down, at the dirt beneath my feet. The ground gave out like wet paper. I dropped to my knees as the soil sank under me, cold and thick. I clawed at the grass, but it came up in chunks. Something grabbed my wrist. Not hard, just enough to make me stop struggling. It was a hand, warm, human, from beneath the soil. Another hand gripped my other wrist. Then another clutching at my ankles. Not pulling, not hurting, just holding. The whisper came again right at my ear, "Don't fight it." "We've been waiting," I screamed and tore free, crawling out of the depression. The fog thinned for just a second, enough to see where I was. The gate was 20 feet away. I ran. The metal was slick with condensation. My hands slipped, but I got over it, landing hard on the other side. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. I didn't even look back. I drove home with my high beams cutting through the mist, my chest tight, my fingers numb on the wheel. When I got inside, I locked every door and sat on the couch, shaking. My clothes were soaked through and the smell of dirt clung to me. I tried to call someone, anyone, but every contact name on my phone was gone. Every single one. The only thing left in my messages was a single thread labeled unknown. The last text, time-stamped for tomorrow morning, said, "Funeral at noon." I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The fog didn't lift outside my window. It just hung there, thick and low. Around 3 a.m., I thought I heard a knock on the glass. When I looked, there were fingerprints in the condensation. 4 of them. Too long to be mine. I wiped them away, but they came back within seconds. The outline of a hand pressing from the outside, dragging slowly downward until it disappeared. Then my phone buzzed again. A voice message. I didn't open it, not at first. I just stared at the waveform bouncing on the screen. When I finally hit play, all I heard was soil shifting. The faint scrape of nails and under it barely audible. We're not done listening. Morning came gray and heavy. The fog hadn't moved. I went outside just to prove to myself it was over, that it had all been a nightmare. But there was dirt under my fingernails again. Fresh, damp, cold. And in the middle of my front yard, right where the grass dipped, was a small wooden marker. My name. The ink's still wet. I don't leave the house anymore. It doesn't matter. The fog finds its way in through the vents, through the cracks in the windows. Sometimes I wake up and taste dirt in my mouth. Sometimes I hear breathing from under the floorboards, and every night, without fail, my phone vibrates at 11 p.m. When I answer, I hear the same whisper. "You listened. Now let me out." The fog had already swallowed the far end of the cemetery when I saw the light again. A dull orange glow bobbing slowly between the rows of graves. It was the 3rd night in a row. I told myself I wasn't scared. I worked here for God's sake. Night shifts, mostly. Mowing, trimming, cleaning the paths. I'd been alone here more nights than I could count. But this light, it moved differently. Not like a flashlight. It swayed, like an old lantern. And the worst part was that it always stopped in the same place. Right beside the caretaker's grave. I took the job 6 months ago after getting laid off from the plant. It wasn't bad. Quiet, steady hours, no people to deal with. Just me, the fog, and rows of stone markers fading into the dark. The caretaker before me, Mr. Halden, had worked here 40 years. Died on site, according to the old records. Heart attack during a storm, lantern in hand. They buried him right near the maintenance shed. I passed his grave every night. Martin Halden, 1943 to 2013. Always on watch. The first time I noticed the light was last Monday. I'd gone out to check why the generator kept cutting out. When I stepped outside the shed, there it was in a soft orange glow maybe 30 yards away. I thought maybe kids had broken in. Happens sometimes, so I called out, "Hey, park's closed!" The light stopped moving. Then it flickered once, like someone had cupped their hand over the flame, and went out. When I walked over with my flashlight, there was no one there. Just Halden's grave and a patch of wet footprints leading straight toward it, and stopping. The next night, same thing. Only this time, the light appeared earlier, around 10:30. I watched it from the shed window. It drifted between the graves, slow, steady, deliberate, not wandering, searching. Every few seconds it would vanish behind the fog, then reappear closer. By the time it reached the oak tree at the center of the grounds, I could make out the faint silhouette holding it. A tall figure, shoulders hunched, moving with that same slow limp. I ran outside before I could talk myself out of it. "Hey!" I yelled again, my voice shaking. "You can't be in here." The figure didn't turn. The lantern swung once side to side. Then the flame inside flared brighter, flooding the fog with orange. And then it was gone. I don't mean it ran away. I mean it disappeared. Like the light had been snuffed out and the person holding it had gone with it. All that remained was a faint smell of kerosene. By Wednesday, I'd stopped pretending it wasn't real. I brought my camera from home and set it up in the shed window, pointed straight toward the caretaker's grave. At 10:37, the light appeared again. It hovered for a few seconds, then started moving. The same pace, the same rhythm. I kept watching through the screen. At first, I thought it was my eyes playing tricks, but when I zoomed in, I saw the outline again. A man in an old-style coat, wide shoulders, one arm swinging. The lantern dangled from the other hand. I watched him move across the graveyard until he stopped right in front of the camera's view. Then the light flared so bright it blew out the screen. When the image came back, the lens was cracked from the inside. I couldn't shake it. The next day I walked to Halden's grave in daylight just to see. The ground around it looked disturbed. Not dug up, more like something heavy had been dragged across it. His old lantern, the one that used to hang in the shed, was gone. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't even noticed it missing. I crouched by the grave and noticed a line carved into the stone, faint but fresh. Someone had etched words just below the inscription, "Still watching." I ran my hand over it. The stone felt cold like ice even in the afternoon sun. That night I couldn't bring myself to sit in the shed. I parked my truck just inside the gate and watched from there instead. At 10:32, right on time, the orange glow appeared again, this time farther out, near the fence line. The fog made it look like it was floating. Then the lantern stopped moving and something glinted in the beam. A reflection. Metal, maybe. I leaned out my window. "Halden," I said before realizing how stupid that sounded. The light shifted. For the first time it turned toward me, and I swear I saw a face behind it. Pale, hollow eyes reflecting the flame, mouth open just slightly. Then the lantern dropped low, the glow dimming as if descending a slope, until it vanished completely. I drove home at 2 a.m., shaking the whole way. When I got inside, I could still smell the kerosene. I checked my clothes, my hands, everything, but the smell wasn't on me. It was in the air. Then I noticed my boots, they were wet. Not from dew, from mud, and not just any mud. The same gray, clay-like soil from the caretaker's plot. I hadn't gone near it that night. Thursday morning, I quit. Or at least I tried to. I drove to the office, told the manager I couldn't do nights anymore. He gave me this weird look and said, "Son, we don't have you down for nights this week." Haven't since last Friday. I thought he was joking. "What are you talking about? I've been clocking in every night since then." He shook his head. "You haven't clocked in at all. Gate logs show nothing. We figured you were taking time off." I didn't argue. Just left. On the way out, I passed the cemetery. The gate was chained shut. A notice hung on it. Closed for maintenance. Night work suspended. That should have been the end of it. But Friday night, around 10:30, I woke up to the sound of gravel crunching outside my apartment. At first, I thought it was someone walking their dog. Then the smell hit me. Kerosene, strong and sharp, cutting through the stale air of my room. I looked out the window. At the far edge of the parking lot, between the trees, a single orange light moved slowly back and forth, like someone walking with a lantern. I watched, frozen as it drifted closer, the glow bouncing against the sides of the cars. I grabbed my phone, ready to call someone, but before I could dial, the light stopped right outside my window. For a moment, everything went still. The flame flickered behind the glass, throwing long shadows on my walls. Then a voice, raspy, thin, whispered, "Still watching." I didn't sleep that night. Didn't move until the sky started to lighten. When I finally stepped outside, there was nothing there, just the faint smell of smoke and a single footprint in the dirt under my window. Too big to be mine. It's been 3 nights since then. The fog doesn't seem to lift anymore. Every time I drive past the cemetery, I see faint orange flickers inside. Last night, I found something hanging from my doorknob, an old brass lantern. Cold, empty. But the glass inside was fogged with condensation from the inside. When I tilted it toward the light, I saw 4 fingerprints pressed into the glass. I didn't touch it. I didn't move it. It's still hanging there right now, swaying a little every time the wind shifts. And I swear, sometimes when the room goes quiet, I can hear a faint scraping sound from the metal handle, like someone dragging it slowly down a stone path. Tonight, the fog's thicker than ever. I can see the glow from my window now, coming up the hill, steady and slow. I don't think it's looking for me anymore. I think it already knows where I am. The smell of kerosene is stronger now. It burns the back of my throat. My hands won't stop shaking. There's a faint orange reflection moving across the walls of my living room, dancing closer. I know I should run, but I can't because outside the window, through the curtain of fog, I can see him clearly now. The caretaker. Lantern in hand. Face pale, mouth open like he's mid-breath, and in his free hand and swinging gently at his side is a set of keys. My keys. He raises the lantern slowly, until the light floods the room in orange. And through the hiss of the flame, I hear the same words he carved into the stone. Still watching. The light flares once, bright enough to blind me. Then everything goes dark. The first time I saw her, she was standing under the street lamp at the edge of the cemetery, her white dress rippling slightly in the fog. It was 2:17 in the morning. I remember because I looked at my phone the exact moment my headlights hit her. A tall, thin girl with dark hair and bare feet, motionless, staring straight ahead. I hit the brakes so hard the tires screamed, but she didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even blink. I sat there, hands locked on the steering wheel, trying to convince myself she was just some drunk girl who'd wandered out from the bars downtown. Then I noticed what was wrong. She had no shadow. I know how that sounds. I didn't believe it either. At first I thought it was just the fog, or the angle of my lights. But even when I adjusted the beam, there was nothing. The lamppost above her cast a clear circle of light on the pavement, sharp enough to make my own shadow stretch long across the road. Hers stopped at her feet, then vanished. My stomach turned cold. I rolled down my window just a little and called out, "Hey, you okay?" She didn't respond. She just tilted her head slightly like she was listening to something only she could hear. That's when I saw her lips move. Slow, deliberate. Like she was whispering to someone who wasn't there. I should have driven away. I know that now. But I didn't. Because just before the light flickered, I saw something else. There was a reflection, faint, impossible, another face over hers. Like someone standing just behind her, but invisible. And when the bulb above her popped, plunging her into darkness, that second face smiled. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing there, the way the fog curled around her legs, the way her eyes looked straight through the windshield. By morning, I'd convinced myself I'd imagined it. That maybe I'd fallen asleep at the wheel for a second and dreamed the whole thing. But when I drove back to work, I had to pass the same road. And there she was. Same spot, same dress, same stillness. Only now she wasn't under the street lamp. She was standing in the middle of the cemetery gate, and the gate was open. I pulled over before I could think twice. I left the engine running, the heater humming, and stepped out into the cold. The fog was thicker than it had been the night before, wrapping everything in that soft, soundless quiet that feels wrong somehow. Too heavy, too still. "Hello?" I called. She didn't move. I took a few steps closer. The gravel crunched under my boots, each sound muffled instantly by the fog. When I got within 20 feet, she turned her head toward me. Slowly. Her face was pale, almost gray under the morning light. Her hair hung damp and stringy against her cheeks. And her eyes, they weren't empty exactly, just distant, like she was looking through me, focusing on something far beyond. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. Her voice didn't echo, didn't even seem to travel through the air. It was just suddenly there, like she'd whispered it inside my head. My throat went dry. "I just saw you here last night. Are you okay?" She looked past me, over my shoulder, and smiled faintly. "Last night?" she repeated. "No, not me." Her eyes flicked back to mine, and for a second, just a blink, her face changed. The same features, same mouth, but the eyes went completely black. Then she was gone. I don't mean she ran off. I mean she was there 1 second, and the next the fog filled the space where she'd been. I stood there frozen, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Then I heard footsteps. Behind me. Soft, bare footsteps on the gravel. I spun around, nothing. But the gate was closed again. After that, things started getting weird at home. It started with lights flickering, not all at once. Just one lamp at a time, always in whatever room I was standing in. Then came the reflections. Every time I passed a mirror, I'd catch sight of someone behind me. Just for a split second, the outline of a woman. Thin, still, watching. But when I turned around, there was never anyone there. The worst was the night I fell asleep on the couch and woke up to my TV turned on. Static, volume low. There was a faint glow on the screen, not the kind from bad reception, but movement, a silhouette, a girl standing under a street lamp. I don't know what made me do it. But I got in my car and drove straight back to the cemetery. The fog was there again, thicker than ever, wrapping around my headlights in spirals. The street lamp at the edge of the road was still broken. Just a dark, dead pole against the night, but farther inside something flickered, a light. Moving slowly between the graves, I parked at the gate, engine idling, and stepped out. As soon as my boots hit the ground, the air changed. The temperature dropped. Not just cool, but wrong, like walking into a freezer full of old air. I took one step forward, then another. My breath fogged in front of me, even though the air was dead still. The light moved closer. I could make out her shape again, the same long hair, the same pale dress. She stopped about 10 feet away. "You came back," she said. Her voice was calm, almost kind. I needed to understand, I said. "What are you?" She tilted her head, smiling faintly. "What are you?" Before I could answer, the fog around her feet shifted, and I realized something. She wasn't standing on the ground. She was hovering an inch above it. I stumbled back, nearly falling. The beam of my flashlight caught the dirt beneath her, perfectly untouched. No footprints. She drifted closer, her face suddenly sad. "It's not safe here anymore," she whispered. "Then leave," I said. "Why do you stay?" Her expression darkened. "Because you don't." For a heartbeat, I didn't understand what she meant. Then the air around me thickened. The fog pressed close, heavy, almost liquid. My flashlight dimmed to a weak glow. From behind me came a soft shuffle, like feet dragging through gravel. I turned and saw shapes forming in the fog. Dozens of them, figures standing still between the graves. None casting shadows, none breathing. The girl reached out toward me, her voice trembling. They followed the light. Something snapped inside me. I ran, I don't even know which direction. I just knew I needed to find the gate. The fog swallowed everything, trees, stones, even my own sense of distance. I tripped, hit my knees, scrambled up again. Behind me, the footsteps followed. Not running, walking. Dozens of soft, steady steps all at once. When I finally saw the gate, I almost cried. It was open just a few feet, enough to slip through. But before I reached it, a voice called from the fog. Not hers. Mine. "Don't leave her here." I froze. My breath came out in short bursts. "What?" The voice came again, closer now. "You brought her back. She's yours now." The ground under my feet shifted. I looked down and saw a shadow stretching out behind me. Only it wasn't mine, it was hers. The next thing I remember is waking up in my car, engine still running, headlights aimed at the cemetery gate. The fog was gone. The sky was just starting to pale with dawn. For a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it. Then I looked in the rearview mirrors and my heart stopped. There was something in the back seat, a faint pale outline. Sitting perfectly still, when I turned around, the seat was empty, but the headrest was indented, like someone had been resting there all night. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, lights in my house keep flickering whenever I walk by. My reflection lags, a fraction of a second slower than me, and when I go outside at night I can see her, standing at the end of the street in that same white dress, fog swirling around her feet, always facing me. Always still, always smiling. The neighbors say they see me talking to myself in the yard, but I swear I'm not. She talks first. Sometimes she whispers that she's cold. Sometimes she tells me to turn off the lights, and once, just once, she said, "Don't look down." I did anyway, and that's when I saw it, her shadow. Stretching across the pavement, perfectly shaped, perfectly dark, leading straight into mine. Now no matter where I go, my shadow looks wrong. It's longer than it should be. The outline of my head doesn't match. Sometimes when I move, it doesn't follow right away. And when I sleep, I can feel her standing beside the bed, waiting, watching. No shadow of her own anymore, because she's sharing mine. The fog came in so thick that morning it looked like the world had been erased. I couldn't even see the hood of my car. That's the thing I remember most, not the cold, not the silence, just that blinding, white nothing. It felt like driving through someone's breath. I should have turned back, but I didn't, because that was the day I promised I'd scatter my brother's ashes, and I don't break promises. The cemetery was empty when I got there. The iron gates groaned when I pushed them open, and the sound vanished into the fog like it had been swallowed whole. I parked under a dead oak tree, left the engine running, and sat there for a long time, holding the urn in my lap. It was heavier than I expected, heavier than what was left of a person should be. "Hey, man," I whispered. "Guess I'm keeping my word after all." The air inside the car felt too still, too thick. When I opened the door, the fog poured in like smoke, curling around my ankles. It had a smell to it. Damp earth and something faintly sweet, like rotting flowers. I stepped out and started walking toward the center of the graveyard. The gravel path crunched under my boots, but even that sound seemed swallowed. Like I was underwater, somewhere out there a bell chimed. Just one low metallic note carried through the mist. I didn't know if it came from a church or something else. I found a small hill overlooking a pond, or at least I think it was a pond. I could barely see the water, just the faint shimmer of light through the haze. "This is it," I said out loud. Talking to him made it easier, less insane. I twisted the lid off the urn. The ashes looked lighter than I expected, soft gray like powdered marble. I took a breath, then another, and let the wind take them. Only there was no wind. The ashes just hung there in front of me, suspended, like the air was too thick for them to fall. And then they started to move. Not away, but around. They swirled in slow circles, drifting through the fog, and for a second, I thought I could see shapes forming in the cloud, a hand, a face, a mouth opening wide. I stumbled back so fast the urn hit the ground with a hollow clang. The ashes spread wider, mixing with the fog until I couldn't tell one from the other. That's when I heard it. My name. At first it was faint, like someone whispering through static. Then it came again, louder. "Eli." I spun around, heart hammering. The sound seemed to come from everywhere at once, above, behind, inside the mist itself. "Who's there?" Nothing. Just that quiet, endless gray. Then a shuffle. Soft, dragging steps through the wet grass. I backed up until my heel hit something hard. A headstone. I turned and saw a name carved into it. Elijah Turner, my name. My birthday. But the date of death, it was today's date. I don't remember running. I just remember the sudden slam of the car door, my breath fogging the glass, and the realization that my hands were shaking so badly I could barely put the key in the ignition. When the engine finally turned over, the headlights cut 2 weak beams into the fog. That's when I saw it. A shape standing just beyond the light. Tall, still a man. At least, it looked like one. I couldn't make out his face, just a dark outline. And something was wrong with the way he stood. His arms hung too long. His shoulders slumped like he was carrying something heavy. When I blinked, he was gone. I didn't drive home right away. I just sat there, hands clenched on the steering wheel, the urn rattling in the passenger seat. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. Grief, exhaustion, maybe carbon monoxide from sitting with the car running. But when I looked down, there was a thin gray film on my jeans and ashes. They weren't supposed to be there. I'd already emptied the urn. I brushed them off quickly, heart pounding, but my hands started to tingle and then burn. When I held them up, there were faint smudges, fingerprints, in ash, not mine, someone else's. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound in my apartment made me jump. The pipes groaning, the fridge humming, the wind against the windows. Around 3 a.m., I heard something new, a scraping sound, soft, steady, like fingernails against glass. It was coming from my window. I didn't move. Just stared at the shadows on the ceiling, every muscle locked. Then slowly, I sat up. The scraping stopped. I reached for my phone to use the flashlight, but before I could turn it on, I saw it. A pale hand pressed against the window from outside. The fog outside was thick again, pressing up against the glass like a living thing, and in it, I could see a face. It looked like him, like my brother, but it wasn't. The mouth was too wide, the eyes too dark, and when the glass started to frost under its breath, it whispered the same word again. "Eli," I screamed and ran for the door. When I threw it open, the hallway was filled with fog, thick, white, suffocating, and the smell of damp earth and burnt wood, like a crematory somewhere down the hall. I heard footsteps, slow, heavy. They stopped right outside my door. I stood there, holding my breath, every instinct screaming not to make a sound. Then, from the other side, a whisper. Not my name this time. Something else. A single word I couldn't understand. It sounded foreign, guttural, like something pulled from the back of a throat. And when the whisper stopped, the doorknob turned. It didn't open all the way, just enough for the fog to slide in through the crack. It curled around my legs, cold and damp, clinging to my skin. Then, somewhere behind me, I heard the urn tip over and roll across the floor. I turned just in time to see it fall open, and ashes spill out in a slow, swirling cloud that didn't drift down. They rose right toward me. I should have run, but I couldn't move. The ashes hovered mid-air like they were caught in invisible strings, spinning faster and faster until they formed something that looked almost like a person. I stumbled backward into the wall, chest heaving, eyes stinging from the smell, sharp, metallic, like burnt hair and smoke. The air vibrated with a low hum. I covered my ears, but it was inside my head now, pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Then through the haze I saw a shape take form, a man's outline, tall, gaunt. I couldn't see his face, but I knew that shape. I knew that slouch, that way the shoulders leaned a little to the left. "Tom," I whispered. My brother's name scraped out of my throat like glass. The figure twitched. Not a nod, not a movement of recognition. Just a shiver like wind through leaves. I took a step closer. "Tom, is that you?" The humming stopped. The silence that followed was so heavy it felt like it pressed against my skull. Then the voice came. "You shouldn't have come back." My stomach dropped. It wasn't Tom's voice, not really. It was deeper, wrong, like two people speaking at once. What do you mean?" The fog thickened, swirling tighter around the figure. "You let him go," it said. "Now you brought him back." I shook my head. "No, I scattered the ashes." "That's what he wanted." The figure shifted. I could see its arms now, way too long, fingers thin and gray like roots pulled from the ground. That's not where he was meant to be. The temperature plummeted. My breath came out in sharp white bursts. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't stop staring. "Then where was he meant to be?" I whispered. The figure tilted its head. "With me." The lights flickered. For a split second, the figure's face appeared, and I saw both of them, Tom and something else behind him. Something using his shape. His eyes were hollow, mouth slightly open, like he was trying to speak but couldn't. And behind him, the fog pulsed and shivered like it was alive. I lunged forward, reaching out, and the ashes exploded. They filled the apartment, stinging my eyes, clogging my throat. I coughed, waving my arms, but the more I moved, the thicker it got. My skin started to burn. When I looked down, gray handprints were appearing across my arms and chest, smudged in ash. It felt like someone was grabbing me from inside the fog, pulling. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping. The fog followed me, rolling out of the door like smoke from a fire. I ran down the stairs, 2 at a time until I hit the lobby. But when I pushed through the exit, I didn't see the street, just more fog, endless. The world outside had vanished, no buildings, no cars, no sound except for the soft hiss of wind through mist. I looked back, expecting to see the door behind me, but it was gone. The apartment building, the walls, everything had dissolved into white. Only the ground beneath me remained, and damp grass, half-sunk headstones, the cemetery. My pulse pounded in my ears. No, somewhere ahead. I heard footsteps. They were slow, dragging, like someone walking barefoot through wet dirt. I turned in circles, trying to see where they were coming from, but the fog kept shifting, thickening, thinning, closing in again. Then I heard it, my brother's voice, Eli. It was soft, cracked, but it was him. "Tom?" I spun toward the sound. "Tom, where are you?" He didn't answer. Just that low, wet sound of movement. I took a step forward, hand out in front of me. The ground felt soft, spongy. My boot sank into mud. Another step, and then my toe hit something solid. I looked down. It was the urn, lying half buried in the dirt. When I picked it up, it was warm. Too warm. And when I looked closer, I realized it wasn't empty. Inside was a small pile of ashes. Fresh. I froze. My heart skipped once, then started hammering. The ashes shifted, just slightly, like something breathing beneath them. Then I heard the whisper again. "Eli." I looked up, and he was standing right there. Tom. But he didn't look right. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and the fog around him clung to his body like it was trying to keep him upright. His mouth opened like he was about to say something, but instead, gray dust poured out. He reached toward me, and I stepped back instinctively. The urn slipped from my hand and shattered. The ashes spilled out and spread in a spiral on the ground. Tom froze. Then he smiled. Slow. Sad, like he'd been waiting for that. "I told you not to come here," he whispered. And then he collapsed into the fog, dissolving completely. I fell to my knees, coughing, crying, not even sure which was which. The air felt thicker now, heavier. Somewhere in the distance, the same low bell tolled again. One deep note, then silence. When I looked up, I realized the fog wasn't moving randomly anymore. It was circling me, like a whirlpool, and in its motion I could see faces, dozens of them, all gray, all whispering. Some of them looked like people I recognized, neighbors, classmates, strangers from years ago, all with the same hollow eyes, and they were all mouthing one thing: stay. I ran. I don't know for how long. Time didn't feel real anymore. I just kept moving until the fog began to thin and the dark outline of a road appeared ahead. I stumbled out, gasping. My car was there. Headlights still on, engine still running, exactly where I'd left it. I threw open the door, jumped inside, and slammed it shut. The air was clear. No fog. No ashes, just the faint hum of the engine. I sat there shaking, staring out the windshield. Nothing. Just empty fields and faint dawn light starting to break through the clouds. It was over. At least, that's what I thought. When I got home, I went straight to the shower. I stood under the water until it ran cold, trying to wash the smell of earth and smoke off my skin. When I stepped out, the mirror was fogged over. I wiped it with my hand and froze. There was something written there, 3 words, traced in ash. "You brought him." My stomach turned. I spun around, but the bathroom was empty. Then I noticed it, a faint gray smear on the floor, leading from the doorway toward the bedroom. Footprints, bare gray with ash. My heart stopped. I followed them slowly, each step heavier than the last. They led to my bed and ended at the foot of it. There, sitting on the nightstand, was the urn. Perfectly whole again. The lid was on, sealed tight, and from inside I heard a sound. Not a whisper, not movement, a breath. I don't sleep much anymore. Every night the fog rolls in heavier even when it's supposed to be clear. It seeps through the window cracks, curling across the floor. And when I wake up, the urn has moved a little closer to me, just a few inches each night. Sometimes, I swear I can hear it. A faint scratching sound from inside, like fingernails on metal. I tried throwing it away once. Took it miles out into the woods and buried it. But the next morning, it was back on my nightstand, still warm, still sealed. And when I looked closely at the side of it, I saw something new, a reflection, my own face, only it was smiling and my lips weren't moving. The first time I heard it, I thought someone was working late. It was close to midnight and the fog had rolled in heavy, the kind that turns streetlights into floating halos. I was walking home from the bus stop, cutting through the old cemetery like I always did. It's not as bad as it sounds. I live across from it and the path saves me 15 minutes. Normally it's quiet, just the crunch of gravel, the creak of branches, the occasional owl. But that night I heard singing. Low, slow, and rhythmic, a man's voice, and he was counting. 1, 2, 3. The sound drifted through the fog, rough and tired like a smoker humming through gravel. It came from somewhere deep among the graves. I stopped walking. The voice kept going. 4, 5, 6. It wasn't close, but it wasn't far either. I couldn't see him. The fog was too thick, but I could tell he was moving. Each count was followed by a dull thud, like a shovel hitting wet soil. That's when I realized what the rhythm was. Shovel, count, shovel, count. A grave being dug. At midnight, I told myself it was the caretaker. He was an old guy, always wore a brown coat and carried a lantern. I'd seen him a few times during the day, tending flowers and trimming grass, always humming some old tune to himself. But I'd never heard him sing like that before. I thought about calling out, but something in the way he said 7 made the hairs on my arms rise. It sounded almost pleased, like he was keeping score. I walked faster, eyes on the gate ahead. My boots crunched the gravel louder than usual, like the sound was struggling to escape the fog. 8. The voice was closer now. Too close. I glanced over my shoulder. Through the mist, I saw a faint glow. The flicker of a lantern swaying side to side. It was moving toward me. I started running. Didn't look back until I hit the gate. When I finally turned around, the glow was gone. The singing had stopped. Just silence and fog. I stood there for a minute, heart racing, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Then I heard it again, faint, almost drowned by the wind. 9. I didn't go through the cemetery again after that. For 3 days, I took the long route home, even though it meant getting in late and freezing my ass off walking the extra distance. But on the 4th night, the fog came back thicker than ever. You couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, and I swear out from my window and I heard it again. That same rough voice, drifting through the night, counting. I shut my curtains, turned on the TV, tried to drown it out. But every few seconds between the commercials and the static, I could still hear it. 4, 5. It stopped at 6 that time. Then came a sharp clang, metal on stone. And after that, a sound that didn't belong to any living person. A low, wet gasp, like something being pulled out of the earth. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that faint orange lantern swinging through the fog. By morning, I convinced myself it was just stress, maybe a dream that leaked into reality. So that night, I did something stupid. I went back. The cemetery was silent at first. The fog lay low and heavy over the ground, turning the tombstones into faint silhouettes. I carried my phone flashlight, though it barely cut through the mist. The path was damp, the air colder than it should have been. I could smell wet soil, something faintly metallic underneath. I made it halfway across before I heard it again. That voice. Closer this time. 1. The light from my phone flickered. I turned slowly, aiming it toward the sound. And there he was. The caretaker. Or something that looked like him. He stood maybe 30 feet away, half hidden in fog. The lantern swung from his hand, casting soft orange light that made his face glow in uneven patches. But something was wrong. His skin looked pale and tight, stretched too thin over his cheekbones. His eyes were dark hollows, but not empty. They shimmered, like something wet and moving just beneath the surface. He lifted the shovel again. 2. The sound of it hitting dirt echoed across the graves. I tried to speak, to say anything, but my throat locked up. He stopped digging, turned his head slightly toward me, then smiled. 3. That broke me. I ran. Branches clawed at my arms as I cut across the rows, trying to find the gate. But no matter which way I turned, the fog closed in thicker. My flashlight started to dim, battery icon blinking red, and the voice followed. 4, 5. I tripped, hit the ground hard, and the phone flew from my hand. The light rolled away, pointing upward, and that's when I saw them. Figures standing in the mist, dozens of them, pale, silent, unmoving, each one half buried in the dirt, their lower halves sinking into the ground like they'd grown there. Their mouths were open, and they were mouthing the numbers. 6, 7, 8. I scrambled to my feet, ran blindly through the graves until I saw the faint shape of the gate ahead. When I reached it, I almost crashed into it, but it was locked. I shook it hard, the rusted chain rattling.
"Let me out."
Behind me, the counting stopped. Then we heard the sound of footsteps, slow, measured, crunching on gravel. I turned. The caretaker stood there, lantern swaying gently at his side. He raised the shovel, resting it on his shoulder. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. His voice was calm now, almost gentle. I heard you," I stammered. You were digging." He tilted his head. "I always dig." His smile widened. "You've just never stayed long enough to hear the end." He took a step forward. The light from his lantern hit the ground, and I saw what was beside his feet. An open grave, freshly dug, and next to it a small wooden marker. I leaned closer, heart hammering. There was a name carved into it. Mine. I backed away so fast I slipped and fell against a headstone. The caretaker sighed, almost pitying. 10, he whispered, and for a moment, everything went silent. Then behind me, the earth shifted, a soft, wet sound, like something moving just below the surface. I scrambled up, but before I could run, a hand shot out of the ground, gray, slick with mud. It grabbed my ankle and pulled. I kicked and screamed, clawing at the dirt, but the ground opened beneath me like quicksand. The caretaker just watched, his lantern glowing faintly above. He began humming again, that same slow, rhythmic tune, the grave digger's song. I could hear the words now, faint beneath his breath. Lay them down one by one. Count until the digging's done. The earth rose around my legs, cold and wet, pulling harder. Please, I gasped. Stop. He didn't. 10 and 1, 10 and 2. When I'm done, I'll come for you. Something broke inside me. I grabbed the shovel beside the open grave and swung it wildly. It connected. I think I hit him, because the lantern fell and shattered, the flame sputtering out. The light died instantly, and darkness swallowed everything, but I kept running. I don't remember how I got out. Maybe the fog lifted. Maybe I just ran in the right direction by chance. All I know is that when I reached my apartment, I was covered in dirt up to my knees. My hands were bleeding. My shoes were gone. And in my pocket, there was something I didn't put there. A small piece of wood. I pulled it out and dropped it instantly. It was the marker, the one with my name on it that was 3 nights ago. Since then, I keep hearing it again, the counting, always around midnight, sometimes faintly outside my window, sometimes from inside the walls, always stopping at 10. But last night, it went further, 11. This morning, when I opened my door, there was dirt on my welcome mat, a straight line of footprints leading from the street to my apartment. At the end of the line was something half buried in the rug, a rusted lantern, still warm, and when I lifted it, a voice whispered from inside. That same voice, low, tired, full of dirt and smoke. Lay them down, one by one. Then faintly, almost too soft to hear, 12. I don't go near windows anymore. I keep the lights off. It doesn't help. The singing finds me anyway. Sometimes late at night, I can feel the floor shift, soft and hollow underneath, like there's something moving in the soil beneath the building. And when I close my eyes, I see him, standing in the fog, shovel in hand, lantern swaying, always smiling, always counting, waiting for me to join the song. The first time the mausoleum door opened, I thought it was the wind, but there was no wind that night. No sound at all, actually. Not the crickets, not the trees, not even the hum of the nearby road. Just that thick, heavy silence that comes right before something bad happens. I'd been working the late shift at Greenvale Cemetery for almost 2 years, and I'd never heard silence like that before. It was the kind that makes your body tense before your brain understands why. I was doing rounds with my flashlight, trying to ignore the fog creeping through the headstones. Then I heard it. A soft creak followed by the slow drag of stone against stone. When I turned the light toward the sound, the beam hit the mausoleum. The door, the one that had been sealed for over a century, was standing slightly open. At first I just stared. The thing was made of solid marble, heavy as hell, sealed shut with rusted chains and a padlock the size of my hand. Except the chains were gone. The lock was lying in the grass, snapped clean in half, and from inside the open crack, I could see darkness so deep it seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. I took a slow step closer. My breath fogged in front of me even though it wasn't that cold. Hello? I called, my voice sounded small in that space, swallowed up by the air. No answer. I told myself it had to be vandals. Kids, maybe. The gate had been broken for weeks. But something about the way the door stood open, not wide, not forced, just waiting, made my skin crawl. The fog thickened around my legs as I approached. When I reached out to touch the edge of the door, it was ice cold. Colder than the night air, colder than stone should ever feel. And then something inside moved. It wasn't a sound exactly, more like the air shifting. I felt it before I heard it. A low vibration, a pressure in my chest that made me want to step back. The light flickered. "Anyone in there?" I said again, forcing my voice to stay steady. Still nothing. I leaned in a little, aiming my flashlight into the crack. The beam lit up maybe a few feet inside before the fog swallowed it. Then I saw something on the ground, a set of footprints. Bare. Feet. Small. They started at the doorway and disappeared into the dark. I backed up fast, nearly tripping over the path. My brain was already making excuses. Condensation, animals, maybe marks from before it was sealed. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The prints were fresh. I locked the gate to the main grounds and called my boss. Straight to voicemail. I left a message anyway. "Hey, someone broke into the West Mausoleum. I'm heading home early. I'll check back tomorrow." Then I got the hell out of there. But the next morning when I came back, the door was shut again, completely sealed. The chains were back in place and the padlock, the one I saw broken in half, was hanging there, rusted and solid like it had never been touched. I told myself I must have imagined it. Lack of sleep, bad lighting, whatever. But when I unlocked the office later that day, there was a smell inside I couldn't ignore. Damp stone and rot, like something had crawled up from the dirt. The smell was strongest near my desk. And that's when I noticed the footprints. The same small, bare prints, leading straight to my chair, and on the seat, a smear of mud shaped like a handprint. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that door, the way it stood open just enough to breathe. By midnight, I gave up trying to sleep. I grabbed my keys and drove back to the cemetery. The fog was back, thicker than the night before. When I pulled up to the gate, my headlights hit something that made my heart stutter. The mausoleum door was open again. I left the car running and got out slowly. The gravel crunched under my boots. The air felt heavy. Not just cold, dense, like it was pressing in from all sides. I kept my flashlight low, moving toward the mausoleum one slow step at a time. The fog rippled slightly, like something was moving through it just ahead of me. When I reached the steps, I noticed something new. Carvings, fresh ones, scratches etched into the stone around the doorway. I knelt down and ran my fingers over them. The edges were sharp. At first I thought they were random marks, but when I looked closer, I realized they formed words. "Don't let it close." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Then something behind me shifted. A crunch of gravel, light but definite. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the fog. No one. But I felt it, that same cold pressure in the air. And then, a sound from inside the mausoleum. A whisper. Not clear words. Just a breathy murmur that made my skin prickle. I lifted the flashlight, aiming it through the gap. This time, I saw farther inside. The chamber was small, maybe 20 feet deep, lined with stone shelves where the old coffins rested. Most were cracked or covered in dust. But at the very back, one was missing, an empty space, clean and bare, as if something had been taken out recently, or as if something had gotten out. The whisper came again, louder now, closer. It was coming from the empty shelf. I should have run. I know that now. But instead I stepped forward, just 1 foot inside. The temperature dropped instantly. My breath came out in white clouds. The flashlight flickered again, then dimmed completely. For a moment, there was nothing but dark. And then I heard it. A slow scrape of stone on stone. The door behind me. It was moving, closing. I lunged for it, slamming my shoulder into the edge. The weight was unbelievable, like something was pushing from the other side. "Stop," I yelled. "Who's there?" The whisper turned into a sound that almost resembled laughter. Soft, airy, cruel. I shoved harder, trying to wedge my boot in the gap. The pressure stopped. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Then a voice spoke. Clear this time, close enough to feel the breath of it on my ear. "Now you're one of us." The door slammed shut, and the flashlight went out. For what felt like forever, I stood there in total darkness. Then faintly, I saw it. A pale glow spreading along the walls. Not light exactly, more like a faint phosphorescence seeping through the cracks of the stone. Shapes began to appear. Faces, pressed into the walls, eyes closed, mouths open in silent screams. I stumbled back, heartbeat roaring in my ears. My hand brushed against one of the shelves, and the stone beneath my palm pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Then I heard the sound that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Breathing all around me. Slow, shallow, synchronized, like the walls themselves were alive. I pounded on the door until my fists went numb. No one answered. No one came. And then, through the tiny slits near the top of the door, I saw something, movement outside. A figure, tall, human-shaped, holding a lantern. The caretaker. He was watching me. I screamed for help, but he didn't move. Didn't speak. Just raised one hand and pointed to the door, and then slowly the lantern light faded, until all that was left was the dark. I don't know how long I stood there in the dark before I realized I wasn't alone anymore. The breathing wasn't just from the walls anymore. It was behind me. Slow, deliberate, like someone trying not to be heard. My back pressed against the cold stone door. My fingers dug into the seams, desperate for any leverage. "Who's there?" I whispered. The breathing stopped. For a long, unbearable moment, the silence returned. Then, in the pitch-black air, a whisper brushed against my neck. "Still here." I swung the flashlight like a weapon, even though it was dead. It hit nothing but air. My own breath was shaking now, loud in the silence. Then something brushed my sleeve, soft, cold, and damp. I staggered back, slamming into a stone shelf. A thick puff of dust exploded into the air. It carried a smell, an old rot, dried flowers, and something else. Something sweet and wrong, like burnt honey. My eyes adjusted just enough to see faint movement. The wall opposite me seemed to shift. For a second, I thought it was just my eyes playing tricks, until the faint outlines of faces began to twist. Mouths opened wider, and the breathing started again. All of them. In unison, I pressed my palms against my ears, but the sound wasn't just heard. I could feel it, to inside my head, vibrating through my teeth. Then came a new sound, a slow, dragging scrape across the stone floor. Something moving, something crawling. When the faint glow returned, that strange, sickly green light seeping from the cracks, I saw it, a figure. It was small at first, hunched, pale as candle wax. Its arms were too long and its head hung low, hair wet and clinging to its face. It moved toward me on all fours, each step echoing through the chamber like bones against stone. I froze. It stopped halfway between us, head tilted, sniffing the air like an animal. Then it spoke, a soft, cracked voice. "Let me out." My throat closed up. I couldn't speak, couldn't move. The thing lifted its head. Its eyes were milky white, its mouth too wide. And then I realized its face wasn't rotted. It was unfinished, like something that hadn't decided what it was supposed to look like yet. "Please," it whispered again, voice breaking. "You opened the door. Now let me out." It began crawling faster, desperate, reaching out a hand. Its fingers weren't solid. They shifted, bending like smoke. When it touched the floor, the stone hissed, leaving dark streaks behind. I stumbled sideways, nearly tripping over a fallen urn. It reached again, and its hand brushed my boot. The pain hit instantly. My skin burned where it touched. Like acid, I kicked hard. The thing shrieked, and the walls answered. Dozens of voices screaming in a single terrible breath. The mausoleum trembled. Dust rained down from the ceiling. I ran. I didn't know where, but there was another corridor branching off the main chamber. I dove into it. The air was colder there, tighter, the walls narrower. At the end of the passage stood another door, smaller. Wood, not stone. The only thing that looked remotely normal. I didn't think. I just grabbed the handle and pulled. It swung open easily, revealing a staircase spiraling down into blackness. From below came the faintest flicker of light, like a candle struggling to stay alive. And faintly, the sound of someone humming, a slow, tuneless melody that made my stomach twist. I descended, one hand on the wall, one clutching the dead flashlight like a club. The stone under my boots was slick, almost slimy. Halfway down, I started to notice the carvings again. Deep grooves etched into the walls, winding in spirals and strange shapes, and then words. I traced them with my fingers. The door is not a door. I didn't understand it then, but I do now. At the bottom of the stairs was a small chamber lit by a single candle in a metal holder. The wax had melted over everything, forming thick layers like frozen waterfalls. And in the center of the room stood a coffin. It was open, empty, except for a small music box sitting where the head should have been. The melody was soft, mechanical, tinny, the same one I'd heard hummed on the stairs. I took a step closer. The box was engraved with initials. E.M., my grandmother's name. Before I could process that, I noticed something else. There were more of them. Music boxes, dozens, scattered across the floor, each with different initials carved into the lids, each playing its own faint, off-tempo tune, and every one of them, slightly out of sync. The sound was unbearable. 100 tiny songs fighting to finish. That's when I heard the footsteps again, coming down the stairs, slow, heavy. Not the crawling thing this time, something larger, something walking upright. The candle flame flickered, stretching the shadows tall and thin. I backed away from the coffin, heart slamming against my ribs. A voice drifted from the stairwell and low, calm, almost familiar. Didn't I tell you not to open it? The caretaker stepped into the light. His lantern burned faintly at his side, but his face was wrong. Off. Half of it looked human. The other half was dark and wet, like clay that hadn't set. You shouldn't have come back, he said, almost kindly. Now it can't be closed. What can't? I stammered. He smiled, and his teeth were too many. Too even. The door. Before I could react, the candle went out. The room dropped into total blackness, and from somewhere all around, the music boxes began to wind down one by one, until only one was left playing. The caretaker's lantern flickered weakly. Then, from behind him, movement. Dozens of pale hands reaching out from the walls, from the floor, from the dark itself. They wrapped around his legs, his arms, his face. He didn't fight. He just looked at me and whispered, "Don't let it take your name." Then he was gone. Pulled into the dark, his lantern falling and shattering on the stone. I ran. I don't know how I found the stairs again, but I climbed until my legs gave out. The door at the top slammed open when I hit it, and cold night air flooded my lungs. The fog outside glowed faintly, silver under the moon. I stumbled out, fell to my knees, and looked back. The mausoleum door was wide open now, the carvings glowing faintly along the edges. Inside, the air shimmered like heat, and I saw faces in the dark, hundreds of them, layered, overlapping, whispering, repeating, a single phrase over and over. "Give us your name." I ran until the cemetery, disappeared behind the trees. I didn't stop until I reached the main road. When I looked back one last time, the fog was spreading, creeping past the gate, spilling onto the asphalt like smoke. And in the middle of it, the mausoleum door was still open. That was 2 weeks ago. I quit the job, moved 2 towns over, tried to forget. But last night, I woke up to find mud on my floor and small, bare footprints leading from my front door to my bed, and on my pillow a thin strip of paper. Old, yellowed, crumbling at the edges. It had a single word written in faded ink. Taken. This morning I looked in the mirror. For a moment, I didn't recognize the face looking back. Not because it looked different, bro, but because when I whispered my own name out loud, it felt wrong. Empty. Like it didn't belong to me anymore. And when I blinked, just for a second I saw it, and my reflection, standing behind the mausoleum door, smiling, waiting for me to come back and take my place. It always starts the same way, with the knock. 3 soft taps on the front door, always around 4:17 a.m., always just before sunrise. The first time it happened, I thought it was a drunk neighbor, or maybe a delivery mistake, but when I opened the door, there was no one there, just fog rolling off the fields behind my house, thick and quiet and colorless. The second time, there were footprints, bare, small and wet. They stopped right at my doormat. The third time, they spoke. I'd been living alone since my dad passed. His old farmhouse sat on the edge of the cemetery grounds, the same property line he used to tend when he was alive. He'd always warned me not to stay out after dark, not to answer voices when the fog came down. I thought he was just superstitious. That morning, when I heard the knocking again, I decided I was done being scared. I crept to the window beside the door, careful not to make noise. The fog outside was so dense I could barely see the porch. But I saw movement, the faint outline of someone standing just beyond the light. A woman. She was barefoot. Her hair hung over her face, long and dripping wet, and in her hands she held something. A small box wrapped in cloth. "Please," she said. Her voice was low, trembling. "He's lost." My heart started racing. "Who's lost?" I called through the glass, but she didn't answer. She lifted her head slightly, and for a split second I saw her face, pale, grayish and hollow-eyed, like she hadn't slept in years. Then she turned toward the fields, her voice breaking. "He can't find the door." The fog thickened, swallowing her whole. By the time I opened the door, she was gone. But the box was still there. I should have left it alone. I know that now. It was wrapped in a thin, dirty cloth. Damp, heavy. Inside, something rattled softly when I lifted it. I took it to the kitchen and unwrapped it on the table. It was an old tin music box. The kind with a hand crank on the side. When I touched it, it felt warm. I hesitated, then turned the crank once. The melody that came out was faint, uneven. But it was familiar. My father used to hum it when he worked the graveyard shift. The box stopped suddenly, as if the mechanism jammed. I stared at it, heart pounding, when I heard something outside. Soft, muffled voices carried by the fog. I moved to the window again. There were more figures now, at least 5, standing on the edge of the field. Too still, too close together. The fog shifted, and I realized they were facing the house, watching. I locked every door and window I could find, turned off the lights, and waited in the living room, clutching the old shotgun my dad left behind. Minutes passed, then hours. By 6 a.m., the fog started to thin and the figures were gone. I told myself it was all some kind of stress dream, that maybe grief and isolation were finally catching up with me. But then, at sunrise, I heard the music box again, from upstairs. I moved slow, quiet, up the steps. The floorboards creaked under my feet. The sound was coming from my father's old bedroom, the one I hadn't opened in years. When I reached the door, the music stopped. I stood there listening. The air smelled like dirt. Wet dirt, and underneath it, something else, ash. When I finally pushed the door open, the window curtains were blowing inward, even though the glass was shut. On the bed, the music box was sitting open, spinning slowly on its own, and beside it was a footprint, small, bare, damp. That day I drove into town, ready to tell anyone who'd listen that something strange was happening out there. But when I mentioned the visitors, the store clerk just went pale. "You live near the cemetery, right?" he asked. "Yeah," he nodded slowly. "You should move." "Why?" He didn't answer, just looked at me for a long moment, then whispered, "They only come to the ones who forget to lock the graves." That night, I couldn't stop replaying what he said. Lock the graves. When my dad worked the grounds, he always carried a set of small iron keys. Each one was labeled with a tag: Vault, Northgate, Mausoleum, Fog Cellar. But I'd never known what fog cellar meant until I went looking. The entrance was hidden behind the old tool shed, covered in overgrown weeds, a small wooden hatch, half buried under dirt. I pried it open. A cold draft spilled out, carrying that same scent of ash and earth. Inside was a narrow tunnel leading under the cemetery. The air grew colder with every step, and somewhere ahead I heard it, that faint melody from the music box. When I reached the end of the tunnel, I found a small iron gate, and beyond it, a room lined with old stone slabs. Each slab had a name carved into it. My father's was the last one, except the date of death wasn't carved yet. On the floor in front of the slabs were dozens of boxes, identical to the one I'd found on my porch, each wrapped in cloth, each labeled with a tag. Visitori turned one over and froze. My name was on the tag. The melody grew louder, echoing through the tunnel behind me. I turned, flashlight shaking in my hand. Figures were forming in the fog again, the same ones from the field. Only now, I could see their faces clearly. They weren't strangers. They were the dead from the graves above. Their skin was pale, eyes hollow, lips moving silently with the melody. And in front of them stood the woman from before, her hair matted, her voice soft and broken. "He can't find the door," she whispered again. "You have to open it." "What door?" I asked, my voice trembling. She pointed toward the slabs, right at my father's name. The air shifted. The ground under my feet began to tremble, and one by one, the other boxes began to open on their own, lids creaking, the music clashing in a horrific, discordant symphony. The melody built into something alive, echoing in my chest, inside my skull. Then, from behind the slabs came the sound of stone cracking. A door was forming, a door made of fog. The woman stepped closer, her face calm now. "Every dawn we come for the forgotten," she said. "Every dawn we take another back." Her eyes lifted to mine. "This morning, it's you." Before I could move, the fog surged forward, wrapping around my arms, my throat. Pulling me toward the door, I fought, screamed, clawed at the dirt. But the last thing I saw was my father, standing in the fog, silent, his hand reaching out, not to save me, to guide me through. I woke up in my bed, sunlight spilling across the floor. The house was quiet. The fog was gone. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream, until I noticed the box on my nightstand, the one I'd thrown away the night before. It was open, and inside was a folded note, written in my father's handwriting. "Lock the door. Before dawn, I ran downstairs, heart hammering." The front door was wide open, and outside on the porch, the footprints were back, dozens this time, all facing inward. That was 3 nights ago. I haven't slept since. Every morning around 4:17, I hear them again, like the soft knocks, the faint music. Each time, it gets a little louder, a little closer, and now, as I write this, the fog is already rolling in. The clock says 4:16. There's a shadow on the porch, and the knocking's about to start again. The mist followed me home the night I buried her. I didn't see it at first. It was just a faint haze over the field, the kind that hangs low after rain. But when I turned off the headlights and stepped out of the truck, I realized it wasn't moving like normal fog. It was breathing. I could hear it, and slow, uneven, like someone gasping just out of sight. It had been a long day. I just finished working a night burial, a private request. The family didn't want a service, didn't want a priest, didn't even want the record to show the grave. They paid cash. Said it had to be done before dawn. The woman's name was Clara Holt. No photo. No obituary, just a box. Her brother handed it to me, eyes hollow, voice flat. "Put her in the ground and walk away. Don't pray over her. Don't say her name. I didn't ask questions. Money's money." But as I filled the grave, I kept hearing this faint sound under the shovel, like air escaping from a sealed bag. Every time I pressed the dirt down, the sound came again, a weak, rhythmic breath. I told myself it was the soil shifting. That's what I told myself all night, until I got home. My house sits on a small patch of land surrounded by trees. I like the quiet, normally. But that night, something was off. The air smelled different, metallic, damp, like rust and rain. When I closed the truck door, I heard it again. That same breathing, soft, slow, coming from the tree line. I stood there listening, the hairs on my arms standing up. Then the mist started moving. It didn't drift or swirl like fog. It reached. Long tendrils of vapor stretched toward me, curling around my boots, and the sound, that horrible, wet breathing, grew louder. I bolted inside and locked the door. Every window was fogged over, inside and out. I turned on every light, turned up the radio, tried to drown it out, but the air felt wrong, heavy. I couldn't breathe right, like the mist had followed me inside. That's when the power went out. Everything went black, and the only sound left was the breathing. Now, right behind the door, I grabbed my flashlight and crept to the window. Through the condensation, I could see shapes outside, not people, outlines, barely visible through the mist. They shifted like smoke, but each had the faint suggestion of a head, shoulders, arms. One stood closer than the others. When I aimed the flashlight, it moved toward the glass, and I swear, I saw her, Clara Holt. Her skin gray, her eyes wide open. Her mouth hanging slightly like she was trying to breathe through water. I stumbled back so fast the flashlight hit the floor. When I picked it up again, she was gone. But the mist stayed. It pressed against the windows, thick and alive, curling in slow waves like it was waiting. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the fog was gone. The air smelled clean again. I convinced myself it was grief, guilt, exhaustion, maybe the fumes from the truck, maybe a dream. But when I went outside, the dirt road leading to my house was soaked, even though it hadn't rained. And in the middle of the mud, there were footprints, bare, small, leading from the trees to my door. I went back to the cemetery that afternoon. Clara's grave was still fresh, the dirt dark and heavy, but the surface had sunk overnight, like something had pressed up from underneath. And the cross marker? Gone. In its place was a single handprint in the soil, pressed deep. I didn't touch it. I just turned around and left. That night the fog came back earlier. Around sunset this time. I saw it rolling through the trees as I pulled into the driveway. It wasn't natural. It wasn't wind or humidity. It was coming from the direction of the graveyard, following the same dirt road I'd driven home on. I went inside and shut every window, sealed the chimney, shoved towels under the door. Still, around midnight the smell hit me, that sharp, metallic scent, and then the breathing started again, inside. I followed it to the living room. The flashlight beam cut through the dark, shaking in my hand. The sound was coming from the vent near the floor. When I crouched down and aimed the light inside, I saw something that made my stomach twist. Condensation. The vent was wet from the inside, and pressed against the metal slats was a face. Gray skin, hollow eyes, mouth opening and closing, slow and desperate. Breathing. The second I screamed, the mist exploded out of the vent, flooding the room. It wasn't air, and it was heavy, suffocating. Full of that smell of decay and iron, I ran for the door, but it slammed shut on its own. Something cold wrapped around my ankle. I looked down and saw a hand forming out of the fog, fingers, wrist, arm, clawing at me like it was pulling itself together. Kicked free and bolted upstairs. Every room was filled with it, a low, rolling fog that brushed against the furniture and whispered across the floorboards. Whispered. That's the part that still haunts me. It wasn't just breathing anymore, it was trying to speak. At first I couldn't make out the words, but as I backed into my bedroom, the sound grew clearer, over and over, a rasping voice whispering the same phrase. Give it back. I slammed the door and pressed my back to it. The air inside the room was freezing. My breath came out in clouds, then I saw it, the mirror across from me. Fog spreading across the surface, thickening until it was almost white. Then slowly, a handprint appeared on the glass from the inside, and behind it, her face again. Clara's mouth moving. Give it back. I didn't understand. Give what back? I yelled. Her eyes flicked down, to my wrist, to my bracelet. It was my father's old silver bracelet, the one I always wore when I worked. He used to say it kept the dead asleep. I thought it was just his way of joking about superstition, but Clara's eyes burned into it like it was something she knew. Then the mirror shattered. The mist rushed forward, slamming into me like a wave. For a second I couldn't see, couldn't breathe, and then nothing. I woke up on the floor hours later. The house was quiet. The fog was gone. I told myself it was over, that maybe I'd had some kind of panic attack. But when I stood up, I saw it. The bracelet broken, snapped clean in half, and under it, carved into my wrist, were 3 words in pale, blistered letters. She is breathing. I tried to leave the next morning, packed a bag, loaded the truck. But when I opened the door, the world outside wasn't right. The road was gone, replaced by gray mist stretching endlessly in every direction. The trees were gone too. The sky, the horizon, all swallowed by the same breathing haze. The truck engine wouldn't start, and from the fog ahead, a figure began to walk toward me, barefoot, soaked in gray water, carrying a shovel. I backed away slowly, But the figure stopped a few feet from the porch. It lifted its head. It wasn't Clara this time. It was me. My own face. Eyes gray. Skin cracked, mouth moving in sync with the sound of the mist. When it spoke, the voice came from all around, inside my ears, inside my chest. You buried her wrong. Then it smiled and began to dissolve back into the fog. The air turned cold. I felt it move past me, through me into the house again. The walls groaned. The floorboards creaked like something massive was shifting beneath them. And then, silence. I stood there for what felt like hours, waiting for something to happen. When it didn't, I finally stepped outside. The mist was gone, the road was back, the trees were standing, still in the morning light. But the dirt in front of my porch, where the fog figure had stood and was disturbed, freshly dug, and at the center of it was a single object, half buried in the mud, a small metal bracelet, whole, again, waiting. It's been 3 nights now. I haven't worn the bracelet but every time I close my eyes, I hear it, that slow, uneven breathing just outside the window. Last night, I saw condensation spreading across the glass again, a handprint, smaller this time, and beneath it, written in the fog with a shaking finger, she's not alone. This morning, the air smelled like rain. When I stepped outside, the sky was clear. The road stretched empty and bright, but halfway to my truck, I froze. There were footprints again, leading away from my porch this time. 2 sets, bare, wet. And when I looked down, I realized something was wrong with the ground. The earth wasn't just damp, it was pulsing like it was breathing. Don't think it ever left the grave. I think the grave came with me. And I think whatever was buried with Clara Holt is still looking for air. The mist rolls in every night now. No matter where I go, sometimes I see faces in it. Sometimes I hear her voice, sometimes I hear mine, and tonight when it comes again, I think I'll open the door, just to see what happens when the mist finally exhales.